let's cut through the drama. Let's get to the big point, the elephant in the room. What happened at dinner time the other night? I've heard all kinds of stories, booing, Lagarde storming out the room. What happened, sir?
Oh, this is so silly. So at the end of the evening, they called on me. I just published an op-ed in the Financial Times. And so they called on me. I gave, I don't know, 2-3 minutes of my FT, which basically said that globalization, right, and the outsourcing of your industry to the lowest cost in the world, right, had really harmed America, it had harmed Europe, and it had failed us, and that we need to reshore, need to take care of our own citizens. So that's basically the model. And when I was done with that 2 or 3 minutes, one person of the 200-odd people in the room booed. And I felt honored because it was Al Gore. You know, and Al Gore booed. And I was like, really?
So Madame Lagarde wasn't throwing bread rolls at you from the back? That wasn't happening?
No, I mean, I put it in the FT. I mean, I wasn't like trying to be quiet about it. I mean, I think that globalization, right, and the idea of global supply chains and finding the lowest cost, I mean, that is just not the way to take care of your auto workers, right, who are in Ohio and Michigan. And so we're bringing that back. So think about this. When we were done with, we started auto tariffs, we started working on it in March, and we finished in November. And we were done. The last day when we finished, General Motors and Ford stocks each went up 10%. General Motors ended the year up 60%. If I told you on January 1st that General Motors was going to be on 60%, you would all say, oh, stop it. And how about this? On that same day, Sean Fain, who runs the United Auto Workers, called me and said, I can't believe I'm calling a Republican Secretary of Commerce to say, thank God for you and your administration. You're the first administration who's actually taking care of the auto workers of America. So think about that. You can, if you really think it through, you can take care of the company and the worker. You don't have to pick sides because we want union labor growth in America. These are great jobs. Why wouldn't we want them in America? So that's why Donald Trump wins the union vote, because he's actually pro these workers. He literally is pro these workers. It's not a political thing. It's these are great jobs for Americans. Let's go get more of them.
There's a lot of money set to come into the United States and big bets. A ton of FDR. We can get into that in just a moment. I just wanted to stay on G7 allies. This week's been quite a week. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has said, basically accusing the US of trying to subordinate the Europeans. The Prime Minister of Canada, I'm sure you heard his speech, Mark Carney, the other day, said this is not a transition, it's a rupture. How would you describe relations with those countries at the moment?
I think our relations are perfectly fine, right? I described the relationship with respect to the whole, when Greenland was going back and forth before we sort of settled it with a framework agreement, right? I called it a kerfluffle, right? It's basically like if you have an argument with your spouse, that's not real, you know, it's not a real one. It's like a small thing.
My spouse doesn't go out there and deliver a speech after that argument and say it's the end of the relationship.
Fair enough. But you're right. And I think they overreacted. And it's proof that they overreacted because a day or two later, there's a framework that makes sense, right? What did we say? We said we cared about it for national security, right? We said we care about it in national security. I mean, it's obvious we care about it for national security because if you're going to build a Golden Dome over the United States of America, right, wouldn't you prefer the Golden Dome cover Greenland? So when you're knocking out the missiles, you're not knocking them out right over your head. Like we've all seen Israel like knocking out the missiles right over their head with their Iron Dome. Wouldn't you prefer to knock out the missiles if you live on the east coast of the United States of America over Greenland, a couple of thousand miles away where there's no people, right? Doesn't that sound better? So this is sort of where we're thinking about it and how our national security team is thinking about it.
So what's actually in the framework?
Well, the framework is a national security-based framework. That's what the United States cares about. We care about our national security, and we care about the shipping lanes. So let's talk about the national security and shipping lanes, and let's see if we can't figure out a framework to do that together. And I think that's what the president truthed about. He said we're going to try to figure that out together because those were the key points that the United States of America cared about. And I think the president's been clear about it, and he just wants people at the table dealing with it swiftly. I mean, think about this. He sends out a truth, and like within 4 days, right, we have a framework agreement. Like that's, by the way, that's a pretty effective
and we had
truth,
tariffs on, we had tariffs on, tariffs off.
They were
what
never
does this
on.
do?
They were never on.
The threat of them are coming on for February 1st. What does this do now for the agreement you and your team struck with Brussels because the legal implementation has now been put on hold.
Oh, I think it'll be put on hold probably tomorrow. I mean, come on. That's why I said it's an overreaction. I mean, they know when the president says this is what's going to happen. I mean, what provoked the president? What provoked the president was that they sent military people to Greenland. I mean, they didn't send military people to Ukraine. Like, why are they sending military people to Greenland? It seemed like a provocation.
We spoke to the Finnish leader, and he suggested that was a miscommunication, and he cleared that up pretty quickly. There's something I want to get into with you that I think is quite important. This, of course, is the art of the deal. We talk about it on the programme all the time. The president anchors the story to the extreme and then gets a favourable deal for the United States. I think that's well understood. Something happened, though, in the last 12 months that I think is really interesting. He tried the same thing with Canada and totally upended the election in Canada north of the border. Poilievre was going to sail away with that. The reason Mark Carney's here as Prime Minister is because the President took such an assertive stance on Canada. Now, at the time, I was finding the humour in the conversation. Then the Canadians started lighting up the Bloomberg terminal, sending messages. They were deeply offended. And we've seen that damage the economic relationship with Canada and the United States. And the risk here, Mr. Secretary, and I'd love your thoughts on it and your reaction, because I think this is really important regarding the Europeans. The points you're making about Europe and have made over the last week are valid points, and they're actually well received by a lot of Europeans. But the style in which it's being delivered at the moment, some of them are finding it offensive. Do you think there's a risk here that we damage the economic relationship with the Europeans in the same way we do with the Canadians, and for that matter, derail the conservative movement in Europe that's well underway?
I don't. I think the fact is that you need to rethink. I think Europe is amazing, and it's got extraordinary opportunity and a $20 trillion economy. But think about this. If they had the right digital rules, meaning similar digital rules to the United States, we have $6 trillion worth of committed investment to build data centers in America. And we have a $30 trillion economy. So if they had a $20 trillion economy, you'd say, okay, if they had the same rules, they could get $4 trillion. Or how about $2 trillion? You realize $2 trillion for their economy, right, would be 10 points of GDP spread over 3 or 4 years? I mean, that would produce amazing growth. And let me sort of explain how that works. So we did a deal with Micron, right? They're going to build $200 billion in America. So on Friday, last Friday, we did a groundbreaking of their mega fab, $100 billion fab. And where did they do it? They did it in upstate New York and Syracuse. Now, there hasn't been industrial building in upstate New York in probably 40 years. But if you think about it, it had a huge industrial base once upon a time. So what does it have? It has power, because it has the power infrastructure for that. So what that does is it creates like this enormous uplift. And I think Europe can do the same thing. I think the UK can do the same thing. And Canada is just thinking in this arrogant kind of thought.
Well, but just to build on what John is talking about, it's a style question. Can you get the same results without using words like calling leaders weak or their economies decaying, right? Is it necessary to provoke the visceral feeling that we feel among a lot of leaders here and in conversations with international investors? I mean, is there any other way? Is that style more harmful than it is helpful?
Well, I think it creates listening. Like, people pay attention to it and listen to it. If you just sort of blend in, no one hears anything in Davos, right? Everybody says the same blah, 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 blah. And if you need to break out and you need to say it. So my view is, right, that Canada has never expressed to the world that they have the best deal, the second best deal in the world. The best deal in the world is Mexico, because remember, they have USMCA, which means 85% of the Canadian economy comes into the United States for zero. And there he is complaining that he's going to go to China and improve it. What's he going to do? China's delighted to sell to him. But do you think China's going to open their economy to accept exports from Canada? This is the silliest thing I've ever seen. They have the second best deal because Mexico's got a little better deal. They have 25% on the extra 15%, whereas Canada's got 35% on the extra 15%. But give me a break. They have the second best deal in the world. And all I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain?
Mr. Secretary, in fairness, you've seen from the airplanes, you've seen about a 30% decline in Canadian visitors to the United States, if not significantly more. You've seen a similar type of decline from China. European travelers inbound have come down. There is a sense that people do not want to come to the culture of the U.S., and there is this anger about it. And I just wonder if you think that that's just temporary, or you just sort of dismiss that, or you think it's irrelevant to the actual issues.
I think what that is political marketing. Right? The Canadians have the second best deal in the whole wide world. If they continue this path, right, which is a political path of a certain thing, I'm going to go fly to China, I'm going to open up my markets to China, I'm going to take Chinese electric cars and do all sorts of this stuff, then when USMCA gets renegotiated
this year,
sort of like towards the end of the summer, in the middle of the summer, do you think the President of the United States is going to say, you should keep having the second best deal in the world? I mean, you guys are such great friends. I mean, they are playing with a set of rules that they haven't really thought
I can
through.
hear it in your voice. You're excited about negotiating this, aren't you, later this year?
Well, they've sort of given a sort of a roadmap of saying, so I guess we should change the whole deal, right? You want to be like the rest of the world. You don't want to be this favored neighbor, because you've taken it so for granted that you're willing to come to Davos and say there's two hegemonic powers in the world, and we're going to decide which one we're going to work with. Really? You're going to either work with the United States of America, where 75% of your economy is totally tied to it, or China? Why would you say that? I think it's political. You know, I think if we take it correctly, we should look at it as just political noise coming out of a prime minister, and maybe this is working for his election, right? Because I don't think it can be real, because if you took out the math of Canada's economy and it doing business with the United States of America's $30 trillion economy, there's no such thing as changing what they have today. No one would vote for changing what they had today. Now, maybe they're marketing it well, but they're just for their politics. But they're surely not marketing it well for their fundamental economics for long-term the United States.
The U.S. is doing deals with China, and I'd love you to walk us through what's going on with the H-20s. Is it accurate now that basically for China to get the H-20 chips, Taiwan needs to send them to America for us to put a tariff on them to make money off it and then send to China? And is it your understanding that China might be susceptible now to these chips, suspect because they're entering through the United States?
So it's the H-200. Right? So that's the chip we're talking about. And Jensen Huang came to the Oval Office and he argued that this is a better chip than they can actually make at any scale. Right? So if we sell them to China, right, and Chinese businesses, then they'll start using them and they'll develop on the American tech stack, and that will take some money away from the Chinese tech stack. And it's an interesting argument. There are two sides. There are strong two sides. We shouldn't sell them any, or we should sell them the H-200s.
Where do you sit?
And I stand right in the middle. It was a really, really good discussion, okay? And the president decided that, fine, we'll sell the H-200s to them, okay? And he made that decision. And after he was done, he said, and you know what? I think if we do that, we should get 25% for the American taxpayers, right? Because we're creating something that didn't exist.
Do you think China wants to buy them, knowing that they're going from Taiwan now back to the U.S.,
they're coming to
China?
The United States because in order to collect 25%, right, the process matter to do it right is you import it, put a tariff on it, and then export it again, okay? And so that's the model. It's the process model to execute a plan that the President of the United States of America made, right? So that's just the execution model of how to do it. It's just process, right? And it's the same H-200 chip. And the question we'll find out is that businesses in China want to buy it. That's for sure. The question is, does China's central government, right, want, when they have that same argument, do I want to give my companies this chip that they're all clamoring for? Or do I want to force them to take the pain of using lesser chips that are domestically made, but helping our domestic companies grow? And that's a question we're going to see how it goes. But I think the president put that question out there, and I think it's a really interesting one. I didn't say there's not two sides of that coin. Right? Yeah. But the president thought having Chinese developers on the U.S. tech stack, right, given sort of the middle, he falls that way. And it was a really robust discussion. Both sides of the discussion were in the room. It was a deep and thoughtful discussion, and that's where he came out, and that's why he's the president.
So, just a final thought. Just listening to this engaging conversation of the last 15 minutes or so, do you fancy the Fed seat over at the Federal Reserve? I can see Commerce Secretary in the Eccles building.
I fancy it?
You can see him in the Eccles building.
Oh, my God.
Can you imagine the magic of that news conference? These news conferences are pretty crazy.
I would definitely sign up for the news conference. I'd be going.
You know what I call that? I call that an Amy Winehouse. No.
I call that box office, sir.